Did you know that over 1,700 hospitals in the U.S. alone are rumored to be haunted? That's right. Thousands of medical institutions are said to be the home of restless spirits, eerie apparitions, and unexplainable phenomena. So, do you believe in ghosts? Especially in places where life and death intertwine, like hospitals. Stick around, because today, we're diving deep into the chilling world of haunted hospitals and the unsettling encounters that occur within their walls. Chapter 1: Whispers in the Halls, the Spirits of Abandoned Asylums. There's something uniquely unsettling about the empty corridors of an abandoned asylum. The silence is suffocating, as if the walls themselves are holding their breath, waiting for something to break the stillness. And then it happens, a faint whisper, a distant scream, or the soft patter of unseen footsteps. For those who dare to wander into these decaying institutions, the experience is often one of palpable dread. Here, in the shadows, tortured souls of the past still linger, unwilling or unable to move on. This chapter explores three of the most infamous abandoned asylums in the world: Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Beechworth Lunatic Asylum, and Danvers State Hospital, where the past never truly stays buried. Waverly Hills Sanatorium, Kentucky, USA. Perched ominously on a hill in Louisville, Kentucky, Waverly Hills Sanatorium is often considered one of the most haunted places in America. Originally built in 1910 as a two-story hospital to accommodate tuberculosis patients, it quickly expanded into a sprawling five-story structure to handle the growing number of cases during the early 20th century tuberculosis epidemic. Known as the White Plague, tuberculosis claimed thousands of lives, and Waverly Hills became a final resting place for many. However, the souls of the deceased do not seem to have found peace. The most infamous part of the sanatorium is the Death Tunnel, a 500-foot chute that runs from the hospital to the base of the hill. This tunnel was originally built to transport supplies up to the hospital and dead bodies down, to avoid demoralizing the living patients with the constant reminder of death. Today, the tunnel is a dark, claustrophobic passage where paranormal investigators and thrill-seekers claim to have heard ghostly screams and seen shadowy figures darting along the walls. The temperature in the tunnel often drops suddenly, and some have felt the unnerving sensation of unseen hands brushing against their skin. One of the most chilling tales involves Timmy, a young boy who is said to haunt the third floor of the sanatorium. Visitors report hearing the sound of a bouncing ball echoing through the halls, and some have even seen a small, ghostly figure playing with a ball, only for it to vanish into thin air. But the terror doesn't end there. Reports of a creeper, a dark, crawling entity that moves along the walls and ceilings, have terrified even the most seasoned ghost hunters. This malevolent presence is believed to feed off the fear and negative energy that saturates Waverly Hills. Those who encounter it describe a profound sense of dread that lingers long after they've left the building. Beechworth Lunatic Asylum, Australia. Halfway across the world, in Victoria, Australia, lies Beechworth Lunatic Asylum, another institution infamous for its ghostly residents. Operating from 1867 to 1995, Beechworth was a place where mental illness was poorly understood, and treatments were often more tortuous than therapeutic. The walls of Beechworth have absorbed decades of suffering, and it seems the spirits of former patients are not ready to let go of their anguish. One of the most harrowing stories from Beechworth is that of the headless nun. As the story goes, a nurse was beheaded under mysterious circumstances, her body left in a pool of blood. Since then, numerous visitors have reported seeing a headless apparition roaming the halls, her ghostly form both tragic and terrifying. Some claim to hear her sobs echoing through the empty rooms, while others have felt a chilling presence brush past them in the dark. The ghostly sounds of children's laughter have also been reported, often late at night when the asylum is shrouded in darkness. This unsettling phenomenon is believed to be linked to the mistreatment of young patients who were sent to Beechworth, often against their will, and subjected to brutal forms of treatment, such as electroshock therapy. Many have heard the faint giggles or cries of these ghostly children, sometimes accompanied by the eerie sensation of a small hand slipping into their own. Even the bravest who have explored the asylum report a lingering sense of sadness and fear, as if the souls trapped within are desperate for their stories to be heard. Danvers State Hospital, Massachusetts, USA. Danvers State Hospital in Massachusetts is often regarded as the birthplace of the lobotomy, a grim procedure that was once heralded as a miracle cure for mental illness but is now seen as a barbaric act that left countless patients forever changed. Opened in 1878, Danvers was originally designed to be a sanctuary for the mentally ill, but it quickly became overcrowded and underfunded. Stories of patient abuse, neglect, and experimental treatments soon began to emerge, and many believe that these dark practices left a psychic scar on the property that persists to this day. Among the numerous ghost stories that surround Danvers, one of the most unsettling is that of the nurse on the night shift. As legend has it, a nurse who worked in the hospital's heyday still roams the crumbling hallways, her spectral form glimpsed in the moonlight. Some say she was a compassionate caregiver, while others believe she was involved in some of the more inhumane treatments administered at Danvers. Visitors and urban explorers who have dared to enter the derelict building report hearing disembodied footsteps and seeing a shadowy figure in a white uniform that vanishes upon approach. The notorious lobotomy ward is another source of chilling encounters. Those who venture too close to this area describe feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, nausea, and the inexplicable urge to flee. Some have even claimed to hear the faint sound of metal scraping against bone, a grim reminder of the surgeries that took place there. Shadows seem to dance on the walls in the dim light, and strange noises echo through the abandoned corridors, as if the tortured spirits of the lobotomy victims are still trapped in their own personal hell. Each of these abandoned asylums carries with it a history of pain, suffering, and death, leaving behind a psychic imprint that many believe manifests as ghostly apparitions and other paranormal phenomena. The whispers in the halls are not merely the sounds of an old building settling, they are the echoes of souls that have not, or perhaps cannot, find peace. For those who venture into these haunted places, they do so with the understanding that some doors, once opened, may never close again. Chapter 2: The Wards of the Damned, Ghosts of War Hospitals. War has a way of leaving scars, not only on the bodies and minds of those who survive, but also on the very places where the wounded are brought to heal. Some hospitals, particularly those that served as military medical centers, seem to carry a haunting echo of the past, an echo that has never quite faded. In these grim wards, the spirits of injured and dying soldiers appear to have never left. Patients, nurses, and visitors have reported chilling encounters that suggest the souls of the lost and suffering remain trapped in time, replaying their final moments over and over. This chapter explores the eerie tales of three such hospitals: Royal Hope Hospital in Florida, Bangor Village Hospital in Scotland, and Military Hospital No. 5 in Singapore. Each of these sites has a history steeped in violence and pain, and their haunted reputations reflect the restless spirits that linger within their walls. Royal Hope Hospital, Florida, USA. Built on the grounds of an ancient Timucuan burial site in St. Augustine, Florida, Royal Hope Hospital is a place where history and the supernatural are inextricably intertwined. Established during the Spanish colonial period in the 18th century, the hospital has been a silent witness to centuries of suffering, wars, and death. The hospital's dark past seems to have left a spectral residue that manifests in strange and unsettling ways. Visitors and staff alike have reported hearing disembodied voices whispering in Spanish or English, as well as the unmistakable sounds of soldiers marching down the long, dimly lit hallways. Some have even seen spectral figures dressed in old military uniforms, their faces twisted in pain or determination. These ghostly soldiers seem to be caught in a loop, eternally replaying their final moments of battle. The apparition of a young soldier with a bloody bandage around his head is a frequent sighting. He is often seen wandering the grounds, a look of confusion and desperation on his face, as if he's still searching for a way to escape the horrors of war. One particularly eerie story comes from a nurse who worked the night shift. She recounted a chilling encounter where she saw a group of ghostly soldiers marching in formation through the hospital's main corridor. She described them as looking solid but not quite real, as if they were projections from another time. The nurse stood frozen, watching them until they faded into the darkness. The encounter left her shaken and convinced that the spirits of soldiers who died in or around the hospital had never truly left. In addition to the phantom soldiers, many have reported experiencing inexplicable drops in temperature, sudden bursts of wind in closed rooms, and the unsettling feeling of being watched. Bangor Village Hospital, Scotland. Nestled among the rolling hills of West Lothian, Scotland, Bangor Village Hospital was once a sprawling psychiatric facility that became a military hospital during World War I. Here, the echoes of war are still heard in the form of spectral sightings, unexplained cold spots, and the eerie sounds of phantom gunfire that occasionally pierce the silence of the abandoned wards. The hospital was constructed in the early 20th century as a self-contained psychiatric village, complete with its own church, railway station, and farmland. However, with the outbreak of World War I, it was quickly repurposed to care for the flood of wounded soldiers returning from the front lines. Many of these men arrived with severe injuries, both physical and psychological, and a great number never left. The spirits of these lost soldiers are said to roam the crumbling remains of the hospital to this day. Witnesses have reported seeing ghostly apparitions of soldiers with bloodied bandages and hollow eyes, staring vacantly ahead as they wander the empty corridors. Some have even claimed to hear the distant but unmistakable sound of gunfire, as well as the guttural cries of men in agony, a chilling reminder of the hospital's wartime history. The ghost of a nurse known as Sister Mary is also a common sight. She is often seen moving through the wards as if still caring for her patients. Those who encounter her report an overwhelming feeling of sadness, as if they are somehow connected to the pain and suffering that occurred there. A particularly unnerving tale involves a group of urban explorers who visited Bangor Village Hospital in recent years. As they moved through the decaying wards, they noticed a drastic drop in temperature. One member of the group heard the faint sound of marching boots, and when he turned around, saw a line of ghostly soldiers moving silently past him. He described them as transparent but very real, and said he could see the terror and exhaustion etched on their faces. The experience left the group shaken, and they vowed never to return. Military Hospital No. 5, Singapore. During World War II, Singapore was a hotbed of conflict and suffering, and Military Hospital No. 5 stands as a stark reminder of that brutal period. Originally built by the British, the hospital became a Japanese military facility during their occupation of Singapore. The building has since gained a notorious reputation as a paranormal hotspot, with reports of Japanese soldiers' apparitions and headless ghosts haunting its darkened halls. The hospital's most infamous ghost is that of a headless soldier who is said to wander the corridors searching for his missing head. The story goes that he was a young Japanese officer executed by his superiors for insubordination. His decapitated body was reportedly buried in an unmarked grave on the hospital grounds. Visitors who have encountered his apparition describe him as wearing a full Japanese military uniform, his body gruesomely severed at the neck, and his head nowhere to be found. He is often seen roaming the halls, his footsteps echoing unnaturally in the silence as he appears to search for something, perhaps the peace he was denied in death. Another frequently reported sighting involves a group of phantom Japanese soldiers seen patrolling the hospital grounds, their presence accompanied by an unshakable sense of dread. These spectral soldiers are said to be the restless spirits of those who perished violently during the war. Their appearance is often foreshadowed by a sudden drop in temperature, flickering lights, or the overwhelming smell of burning flesh. Some witnesses have even claimed to hear the faint strains of a haunting melody, a song from the wartime era, drifting through the air. The haunted history of Military Hospital No. 5 is further compounded by the fact that it served as an execution site during the Japanese occupation. Many captured Allied soldiers and civilians met their end within its walls, their final moments filled with terror and pain. The blood-soaked history of the hospital seems to have left a lasting impression, one that keeps the spirits trapped in a perpetual state of unrest. These haunted military medical centers serve as chilling testaments to the horrors that unfolded within their walls. The ghosts of the soldiers who fought and died there seem unable to find peace, forever trapped between the living and the dead. For those who dare to explore these wards of the damned, The past is never truly gone. It is waiting, just beyond the veil, whispering its dark secrets to anyone willing to listen. Chapter 3: Echoes of Agony, Haunted Modern-Day Hospitals. Hospitals are places where life and death intersect daily, where the line between the living and the dead is often blurred. While the sterile corridors and bright lights of modern hospitals are meant to comfort and heal, there are some places where something far more sinister seems to lurk just beneath the surface. In these hospitals, shadows stretch a little too far, whispers come from empty rooms, and some patients never truly leave. This chapter delves into the eerie experiences of 3 modern-day hospitals: St. Thomas's Hospital in London, Good Samaritan Hospital in Los Angeles, and Changi General Hospital in Singapore, where the echoes of agony continue to plague both staff and patients. St. Thomas's Hospital, London, UK. Situated in the heart of London, St. Thomas's Hospital is a renowned medical institution with a history dating back to the 12th century. However, behind its modern facade and cutting-edge medical care lies a chilling tale of the supernatural. One of the most well-known ghost stories associated with St. Thomas's is that of the Grey Lady, an enigmatic apparition that has been witnessed by both patients and staff. According to numerous accounts, the Grey Lady appears by the bedside of certain patients, often just days or even hours before they pass away. The apparition is described as a woman dressed in a long gray dress with a hood that partially obscures her face. Her presence is said to bring a sense of calm, but also an unshakable feeling of impending doom. One particularly unnerving encounter involved a patient who, after awakening from a deep sleep, saw the Grey Lady standing at the foot of his bed. He described her as having a soft, sad smile, and felt a strange sense of peace wash over him. He was dead within 24 hours, despite showing signs of recovery earlier in the day. Nurses and doctors have also reported sightings of the Grey Lady, particularly during the night shift. One nurse recounted seeing her near the intensive care unit, gliding silently through the corridor before disappearing into a patient's room. That same patient died unexpectedly later that night. The frequency of these sightings has led some to believe that the Grey Lady is a harbinger of death, an ethereal guide who appears to escort the souls of the dying to the other side. Despite attempts to rationalize these experiences as stress-induced hallucinations or figments of overactive imaginations, the stories of the Grey Lady persist, casting a long, chilling shadow over St. Thomas's Hospital. Good Samaritan Hospital, Los Angeles, USA. In bustling downtown Los Angeles, Good Samaritan Hospital has served countless patients since its establishment in the 19th century. Yet, beneath the bright lights and busy hallways of this modern facility, strange occurrences suggest that not all of its inhabitants are living. Over the years, both staff and visitors have reported seeing ghostly figures wandering the halls, and unexplained phenomena caught on surveillance footage that defy logical explanation. One of the most disturbing stories centers around a particular room on the 4th floor, known among the hospital staff as Room 431. This room has gained a dark reputation because, allegedly, no patient who has been assigned there ever leaves alive. Despite having no known medical anomalies or structural issues, a string of inexplicable deaths has occurred in Room 431, leading to an unofficial superstition that it is cursed. Patients placed in this room often report feeling an intense, oppressive atmosphere, as if being watched by unseen eyes. Some even speak of a dark figure that appears at the foot of their bed, or stands in the corner of the room, vanishing as quickly as it appears. A night security guard recounted a spine-chilling incident where he was reviewing surveillance footage late one night. As he watched the monitor, he saw what appeared to be a dark, shadowy figure moving slowly down the corridor outside Room 431. Thinking it was an intruder, he quickly went to investigate, but found the hallway completely empty. When he reviewed the footage again, the figure had disappeared. The experience left him so shaken that he requested a transfer to another shift. Even more unnerving are the accounts of visitors who report feeling a sudden chill or inexplicable sense of dread when walking past the room. Nurses and doctors now avoid placing patients in Room 431 whenever possible, citing precautionary measures that have no basis in medical fact but are deeply rooted in fear. The mystery surrounding room 431 and the spectral figures seen on camera continue to fuel rumors of restless spirits haunting Good Samaritan Hospital, leaving an indelible mark on those who have encountered them. Changi General Hospital, Singapore. Changi General Hospital in Singapore, known for its efficient and advanced medical care, also harbors a reputation for being one of the most haunted hospitals in Asia. Built near the site of the old Changi Hospital, which served as a military hospital during World War II, the new hospital is believed to be haunted by the tormented spirits of soldiers and civilians who suffered and died during the Japanese occupation. The modern building may look pristine, but it is said to be a hotspot of paranormal activity. One of the most commonly reported apparitions at Changi General Hospital is the White Lady, a ghostly figure of a woman dressed in white who roams the halls, particularly near the old wing. Witnesses describe her as having long dark hair and an expression of deep sorrow. Her presence is often accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature and the inexplicable smell of burnt flesh, an olfactory reminder of the atrocities committed during the war. Staff members, especially those working the night shift, have also encountered phantom nurses who appear out of nowhere, only to vanish when approached. These ghostly nurses are often seen tending to non-existent patients or moving through closed doors, as if the hospital's physical layout is of no consequence to them. One doctor recalled an encounter where he saw a nurse in an old-fashioned uniform standing by a patient's bed. When he turned to speak to her, she simply disappeared. The patient, who had been unconscious, later reported feeling a cold hand touching his forehead during the night. A particularly unsettling incident involved a group of medical interns who were on a night round. They smelled the overwhelming scent of burning flesh in an otherwise sterile environment. As they continued down the corridor, the smell intensified, and they heard soft whispers in a language they could not understand. One of the interns, feeling particularly brave, followed the sound to a dark, unused wing of the hospital. As he turned the corner, he was met with the apparition of a charred figure standing motionless in the shadows. The figure vanished within seconds, but the experience left the entire group rattled, unwilling to ever venture near that wing again. These hospitals, meant to be places of healing, seem to carry an invisible weight, an accumulation of pain, death, and unresolved trauma. For those who have encountered the spectral figures, phantom nurses, and eerie sounds in these places, the experience is unforgettable, a chilling reminder that perhaps some spirits remain bound to the wards where they drew their last breath. Chapter 4: The Children's Ward, Unseen Playmates and Innocent Souls. There is perhaps nothing more unsettling than the sound of children's laughter in a place that should be silent and still. The innocence of a child's voice, usually a source of joy, takes on a sinister quality when it echoes through empty corridors in the dead of night. Hospitals that once cared for young patients are often imbued with a special kind of sadness. Places meant for healing become spaces where suffering lingers. In the pediatric wards of these haunted hospitals, it seems that the spirits of children, seeking comfort, companionship, or simply a way to be remembered, continue to play, cry, and wander. This chapter delves into the chilling stories from three such places: Pennhurst Asylum in Pennsylvania, Yorktown Memorial Hospital in Texas, and Old Changi Hospital in Singapore. Each is marked by tales of ghostly children who appear to be searching for something or someone they lost long ago. Pennhurst Asylum, Pennsylvania, USA. Pennhurst Asylum, originally known as the Pennhurst State School and Hospital, is infamous for its tragic history and reports of horrific abuse and neglect of its patients, many of whom were children. Located in Spring City, Pennsylvania, this massive institution was opened in 1908 to house individuals with mental and physical disabilities. However, over the decades, it became a place of unimaginable suffering. Despite its closure in 1987, Pennhurst's dark history seems to have left an indelible mark, and the spirits of its former residents, particularly children, appear to remain. One of the most commonly reported phenomena in Pennhurst's children's ward is the sound of disembodied laughter. Visitors and paranormal investigators have described hearing the unmistakable giggles of children echoing through the halls, often accompanied by the pitter-patter of small feet running across the floor. These sounds are said to come from rooms that have long been empty, and from corridors where no living child has walked in decades. The laughter can be playful, but it often takes on a more eerie tone, especially when followed by other noises, like the sound of soft crying or desperate whispers. Ghostly apparitions of children are also frequently reported. One of the most disturbing stories comes from a former security guard who worked at Pennhurst after it was shut down. He recounted a night when he saw a small child standing at the end of a dark corridor. The child appeared to be around 6 or 7 years old, with dark, hollow eyes and an expression of profound sadness. When the guard called out to the child, she simply vanished into thin air. This encounter left him shaken and convinced that the spirits of the children who suffered there were still trapped within the asylum's walls, seeking comfort that never came. Other accounts speak of unsettling interactions in the children's ward, where visitors have felt tiny unseen hands tugging on their clothes or heard faint voices whispering for help. Some investigators have even brought toys as trigger objects, only to see them mysteriously move on their own or hear a child's voice responding to their presence. These interactions, while seemingly innocent, carry a heavy weight, reminding visitors of the pain and fear that permeated Pennhurst's history. Yorktown Memorial Hospital, Texas, USA. Nestled in the small town of Yorktown, Texas, Yorktown Memorial Hospital has long been abandoned, but it is far from empty. Built in 1950 and closed in the late 1980s, the hospital has become notorious for its ghostly encounters, especially involving a little girl with a red ball. Unlike other spirits that seem to appear and disappear without purpose, the little girl at Yorktown Memorial is often seen playing, as if unaware of the passage of time or the reality of her surroundings. Visitors and paranormal investigators who have entered the hospital have reported hearing the sound of a ball bouncing on the tiled floors, usually in the late hours of the night. When they follow the sound, they often see a young girl, no older than 7, holding a bright red ball. Her expression is said to be a mixture of curiosity and sadness. Witnesses claim that she sometimes giggles and even attempts to interact with them, but when they get too close, she fades away or simply vanishes. One particularly poignant story involves a woman who visited Yorktown Memorial Hospital with her paranormal investigation team. As they explored the second floor, they heard a child crying softly. When they followed the sound, they came across the little girl, sitting on the floor clutching her red ball and calling out for her mother. The investigators tried to comfort her, speaking gently and holding out their hands, but the girl slowly disappeared before their eyes. The experience left them deeply affected, as it seemed the child was still searching for the comfort and safety that death had denied her. Some speculate that the girl may have died in the hospital under tragic circumstances and is now trapped, eternally seeking the mother she lost. The staff who worked at Yorktown Memorial in its final years have no record of a girl fitting her description, which only adds to the mystery. Regardless of her origin, the presence of the little girl with the red ball is a reminder of the innocent souls who, for reasons unknown, cannot find peace. Old Changi Hospital, Singapore. Old Changi Hospital, built in 1935 in Singapore, served as a military hospital during World War II and later became a civilian medical facility. It has since been replaced by a modern structure, but the old building still stands, shrouded in mystery and ghostly legends. Among the many chilling stories that surround Old Changi Hospital, some of the most haunting involve the sounds of children playing in the empty wards. Visitors to the now abandoned hospital have reported hearing the sounds of children laughing and playing, echoing through the long, dilapidated corridors. These sounds are especially unsettling because they often occur in parts of the hospital that have been vacant for decades. Some have even claimed to see ghostly apparitions of young patients, their translucent forms wandering aimlessly through the halls as if still searching for something or someone they lost long ago. One account comes from a group of urban explorers who visited the hospital late at night. As they walked through the darkened wards, they heard the unmistakable sound of a child singing a nursery rhyme. The sound grew louder as they approached a corner, but when they turned it, they found only an empty hallway. Suddenly, one of the explorers felt a cold, clammy hand grasp his own. He looked down, expecting to see a child, but there was nothing there. The group quickly left the hospital, their nerves frayed and their minds filled with questions. Another well-known story involves the boy in blue, an apparition of a young boy dressed in a blue hospital gown. He is often seen standing by windows, looking out as if waiting for someone to come for him. Some witnesses have reported seeing him wave or smile before fading away. These encounters are often accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature and an overwhelming sense of sadness, as if the boy is still longing for a family that never arrived. These haunted pediatric wards, marked by the echoes of laughter, cries, and spectral play, remind us that innocence lost can leave a profound imprint on the places it once touched. For those who have experienced these ghostly encounters, the presence of these unseen playmates is both a heartbreaking and chilling testament to the enduring spirit of the innocent souls who still linger in the shadows, forever searching for peace. Chapter 5: The Surgeon's Theater, Spirits of the Operating Room. There is something uniquely chilling about the atmosphere of an abandoned operating room. The stark white walls, cold steel instruments, and harsh lighting are designed to save lives, but they can also serve as the backdrop for some of the most terrifying stories of the paranormal. For those who have died on the operating table, or who have endured painful procedures, the trauma often seems to leave an indelible mark. In some haunted hospitals, these rooms become theaters of lingering pain, where ghostly surgeons continue their work and the cries of those who suffered echo through the years. This chapter explores 3 such places: Royal Derwent Hospital in Tasmania, St. Augustine's Asylum in Kent, and Taunton State Hospital in Massachusetts, where spirits of the operating room remain active, haunting both the living and the dead. Royal Derwent Hospital, Tasmania, Australia. Located in New Norfolk, Tasmania, Royal Derwent Hospital was once a psychiatric institution known for its harsh conditions and experimental treatments. It opened in the early 19th century and served as a place for those considered mentally ill or unmanageable by society. Among its many wards and rooms, the operating theaters were particularly notorious. Patients were often subjected to procedures without modern anesthesia, and many never woke up from the table, leaving behind a lingering sense of dread and despair that permeates the air to this day. One of the most unsettling stories from Royal Derwent involves the appearance of phantom surgeons who seem to be continuing their work long after death. Witnesses have reported seeing shadowy figures in surgical gowns moving around the operating rooms, their faces obscured by old-fashioned masks. These spectral surgeons are said to stand over empty tables, mimicking the motions of surgery, their ghostly hands moving with precise, methodical movements. Some visitors have even heard the faint clinking of surgical tools being laid out on metal trays, only to find the room empty upon inspection. Adding to the fear are the ghostly cries and screams that seem to emanate from the walls themselves. The cries are believed to belong to former patients who died during surgery or were subjected to inhumane treatments. Staff and visitors have also reported the eerie sensation of being watched, and some have felt cold, invisible hands brushing against them as they stood in the operating rooms. On several occasions, surgical instruments have been seen moving on their own, as if guided by an unseen hand, adding to the belief that the spirits of both patients and doctors still linger, trapped in a loop of their final agonizing moments. St. Augustine's Asylum, Kent, UK. St. Augustine's Asylum, located in Chatham, Kent, is another institution known for its haunted operating rooms. Opened in 1875, it was a place where patients were often subjected to experimental surgeries and invasive treatments for their mental illnesses. The operating rooms, in particular, have been the focus of numerous ghostly encounters. Among the most famous stories is that of a ghostly surgeon who was seen performing operations on phantom patients late at night. The story goes that the surgeon, a man known for his cold demeanor and brutal methods, died suddenly while performing an operation in one of the asylum's theaters. Since then, his spirit is said to roam the hospital, continuing his grisly work in death. Numerous night staff and security guards have reported hearing the unmistakable sounds of a surgical procedure being carried out, metal instruments clattering, the soft hum of an old surgical lamp turning on, and even the low murmur of the surgeon giving orders to unseen nurses. One particularly harrowing account comes from a former nurse who worked the night shift. She recalled a night when she was making her rounds and heard muffled voices coming from one of the disused operating rooms. As she approached, she distinctly heard the words, "Scalpel, please," followed by the unmistakable sound of metal against metal. Pushing open the door, she was confronted with the sight of an old surgical lamp flickering to life and a shadowy figure standing over a table. The figure turned to face her, and she fled in terror. When she returned with security, the room was empty and the lamp was off. Patients have also reported seeing the ghostly surgeon standing at the foot of their beds, often during the hours between midnight and 3 a.m. He is said to be dressed in an old-fashioned surgical gown, his face partially obscured by a mask and his eyes cold and unfeeling. The experience leaves them feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, as if they are next on his operating list. Such stories have contributed to the belief that St. Augustine's operating rooms remain active in a realm beyond our understanding, where the surgeon continues his work on souls that have long since departed the physical world. Taunton State Hospital, Massachusetts, USA. In the United States, Taunton State Hospital in Massachusetts is another location where the spirits of the operating room continue to make their presence known. Opened in 1854, this psychiatric hospital became infamous for its use of lobotomies and other brutal surgical procedures to cure mental illness. The operating rooms were places of fear and agony, where many patients were strapped down, often against their will, and subjected to invasive surgeries that frequently resulted in death. One of the most chilling tales from Taunton State Hospital involves the ghostly figures of nurses who are seen moving about the old operating theaters. Witnesses have reported seeing spectral nurses dressed in old-style uniforms, complete with caps, walking through the hallways and disappearing into walls where doors once stood. These ghostly nurses are often described as having a vacant, almost mechanical expression, as if they are caught in an endless loop of attending to non-existent patients. More unnervingly, there have been numerous reports of the sound of surgical equipment being used when no one is there. The distinct noises of saws, scalpels, and other surgical tools clattering against metal trays or cutting through flesh have been heard echoing through the empty halls late at night. One former maintenance worker recounted an experience where he heard these sounds while working alone in the basement. As he approached the source of the noise, it abruptly stopped, and he was left in eerie silence, his heart pounding. He later quit his job, convinced that something sinister lingered in those operating rooms. Other visitors have experienced sudden, unexplainable chills, the sensation of unseen hands brushing against their skin, and even the feeling of being pushed or pulled by an invisible force. Many believe that the spirits of those who died during these horrific surgeries are still trapped in the hospital, forever bound to the place where they suffered so much pain. The combination of ghostly nurses, phantom surgeons, and the chilling sounds of surgery creates a terrifying tapestry of the supernatural, where the line between the living and the dead is blurred. These haunted theaters of surgery, where countless lives were lost or irreparably changed, continue to echo with the pain and suffering of those who once lay upon their tables. For those who dare to explore these rooms, the experience is more than just a brush with history. It is a chilling encounter with the lingering souls who seem unable, or perhaps unwilling, to leave the places where they met their tragic ends. Chapter 6: Voices from Beyond, the Ghostly Nurses and Doctors. Hospitals are places of healing, yet they are also places where life often hangs by a thread. The spirits of those who have passed within these walls are said to linger, unable or unwilling to move on. But what about those who devoted their lives to caring for others? In some haunted hospitals, the spirits of doctors and nurses continue to perform their duties long after their own deaths, as if bound to their roles in the afterlife. This chapter delves into the eerie tales from Severall's Hospital in the UK, Ararat Lunatic Asylum in Australia, and Sanatorio Duran in Costa Rica, where ghostly caregivers still walk the halls, tending to non-existent patients and providing spectral comfort, or sometimes a deep sense of unease. Severall's Hospital, Essex, UK. Severall's Hospital, located in Colchester, Essex, was once a sprawling psychiatric institution that opened in 1913 and operated for much of the 20th century. Known for its questionable methods of treatment, including lobotomies and electroshock therapy, Severall's has a dark history that seems to linger within its walls. The hospital closed its doors in the 1990s, but reports of ghostly apparitions, particularly of nurses and doctors, continue to surface. Among the most frequently reported sightings are the apparitions of nurses who appear to be tending to non-existent patients. Witnesses describe these ghostly nurses as wearing old-fashioned uniforms, complete with starched caps and white aprons, moving silently through the abandoned wards as if they are still on their rounds. Some have seen them bending over empty beds, administering care to invisible patients. A former urban explorer recalled an encounter where he saw a nurse walk down a corridor and enter a room. When he followed her, the room was empty, save for a lingering chill that raised the hairs on his arms. More unsettling is the presence of a spectral doctor who is said to intimidate visitors. This ghostly figure, described as a tall man in an outdated doctor's coat, has been seen pacing the corridors or standing silently at the end of a hallway, watching anyone who dares to intrude. Those who have encountered him report a feeling of intense discomfort and fear, as if they are being judged or warned to leave. One night, a group of investigators heard footsteps behind them, only to turn around and see the ghostly doctor staring at them with an expressionless face. The group fled in terror, convinced they were not welcome. The chilling presence of these ghostly caregivers, still performing their duties in death, serves as a haunting reminder of the hospital's dark past and the suffering that occurred within its walls. Ararat Lunatic Asylum, Australia. Located in Victoria, Australia, Ararat Lunatic Asylum, also known as Arradale, is one of the largest abandoned psychiatric institutions in the Southern Hemisphere. Opened in 1867, the asylum was home to thousands of patients, many of whom were subjected to the brutal treatments of the time. With such a long history of pain and suffering, it is no surprise that Ararat has gained a reputation for being one of Australia's most haunted locations. Among its many ghostly inhabitants, the spirit of a former matron stands out. The ghost of this matron, believed to be a stern and authoritative figure in life, is said to still roam the corridors of the asylum, supervising the wards even in death. Visitors have reported hearing the distinct sound of her footsteps echoing down the empty hallways, accompanied by the swish of her long skirts. The footsteps are often slow and deliberate, creating an eerie atmosphere that makes even the bravest feel a sense of dread. Those who follow the sounds usually find themselves in a dead end or an empty room, with the sounds suddenly stopping, leaving them in an unsettling silence. One particularly chilling encounter involved a security guard who was patrolling the building late at night. As he walked down a corridor, he heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind him. Thinking it was a colleague, he turned around, only to see the shadowy figure of a woman in a long dress standing at the end of the hallway. The figure stared at him for a moment, before disappearing into the darkness. The guard reported, feeling an overwhelming sense of disapproval, as if he were being reprimanded for trespassing in her domain. In other reports, the ghostly matron has been seen entering rooms and wards, her expression stern and unforgiving. Some visitors have even felt a cold, authoritative presence brushing past them, as if she is still conducting her nightly checks. The spectral matron's continued presence at Ararat Lunatic Asylum serves as a chilling reminder of the institution's dark history and the rigid control that once governed its wards. Sanatorio Duran, Costa Rica. Nestled in the mountains near Cartago, Costa Rica, Sanatorio Duran was once a tuberculosis hospital that also served as an asylum and a prison during its operational years. Since its closure in the 1970s, the hospital has become a hotspot for paranormal activity, drawing visitors and ghost hunters from around the world. Among the many stories of spectral encounters, the most famous is that of a ghostly doctor who appears during emergencies, providing comfort to those who are suffering. Known simply as El Doctor Fantasma, the Phantom Doctor, this apparition is said to be the spirit of a compassionate physician who once worked at Sanatorio Duran. Witnesses describe him as wearing an old-fashioned lab coat, his demeanor calm and kind. He is often seen in times of distress, particularly when someone is injured or feels unwell. One local legend tells of a tourist who, while exploring the abandoned hospital, slipped and fell, severely injuring her leg. As she lay there in pain, she claimed she saw a man in a white coat approach her, speaking softly in Spanish. He reassured her that help was on the way and gently touched her leg. Moments later her friends arrived, but the man had vanished. Her leg, which had been throbbing with pain, felt noticeably better. Another account involves a group of paranormal investigators who were conducting a nighttime exploration of the hospital. As they were setting up their equipment, one member of the team began to feel faint and collapsed. In the chaos that followed, 2 witnesses reported seeing a figure in a white coat kneeling beside her, checking her pulse. When they rushed over, the figure disappeared, but the woman regained consciousness and reported feeling as though someone had been comforting her during her brief blackout. The presence of this ghostly doctor is considered by many to be benevolent, unlike the more chilling specters of other haunted hospitals. Some locals believe that the doctor's spirit lingers to continue his mission of providing care, even from beyond the grave. His unexpected but comforting appearances have led to him being regarded not as a ghost to fear, but as a guardian spirit watching over the old sanatorium and those who dare to visit it. Whether it is the stern supervision of a ghostly matron, the intimidating presence of a spectral doctor, or the compassionate care of a phantom physician, these spirits remind us that their dedication to their roles did not end with their last breath. For those who encounter them, the experience is both chilling and awe-inspiring, a glimpse into a realm where the line between life and death is blurred, and where some continue to serve long after they have left the mortal world. Chapter 7. The Ghosts That Heal, Benevolent Spirits in Medical Institutions. Not all spirits that linger in hospitals are harbingers of doom or remnants of suffering. Among the shadows and cold spots, there are stories of ghosts who seem to offer solace and healing rather than fear. These benevolent spirits, bound by a sense of compassion, continue to aid the living, providing comfort to those in distress and guiding them toward recovery. This chapter explores the tales of such benevolent spirits in 3 medical institutions: Old South Pittsburgh Hospital in Tennessee, Metropolitan State Hospital in Massachusetts, and Kuma Cottage in New South Wales, Australia. Each of these locations is touched by the presence of spirits who seek not to frighten but to help, offering hope amidst the fear that so often pervades places of illness and suffering. Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, Tennessee, USA. Old South Pittsburgh Hospital, located in Tennessee, is a now closed facility that has gained a reputation for its paranormal activity. Opened in 1959 and later shut down in the late 1990s, the hospital's abandoned halls have since become a hotspot for ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts. However, amidst the tales of unsettling encounters and shadowy figures, there are also stories of ghostly nurses who appear to comfort patients in distress, offering a stark contrast to the typical horror associated with haunted hospitals. One of the most well-known spirits at Old South Pittsburgh Hospital is that of Nurse Mary. Visitors and paranormal investigators have reported encounters with a kind, maternal figure who appears beside the beds of those who are feeling unwell or overwhelmed. Witnesses describe her as wearing an old-fashioned nurse's uniform, complete with a white cap. Her presence is often accompanied by a sudden sense of calm and warmth, even in the darkest and coldest rooms. One investigator recounted an experience where, after feeling lightheaded and nauseous, he lay down on an old hospital bed. As he closed his eyes, he felt a cool, gentle hand touch his forehead. When he opened his eyes, he saw a faint apparition of a nurse smiling down at him. Moments later, the nausea subsided, leaving him both relieved and profoundly moved by the encounter. There are also stories of patients who, during the hospital's operational years, spoke of a nurse who would appear in the middle of the night, offering comfort and a soothing presence. Some claim that this spectral nurse would whisper reassuring words or gently hum a lullaby, especially to children or the elderly who were in pain or frightened. Many believe that Nurse Mary is the spirit of a former staff member who was deeply committed to her patients and has continued her mission of care from beyond the grave. Metropolitan State Hospital, Massachusetts, USA. Metropolitan State Hospital, once a psychiatric institution in Waltham, Massachusetts, operated from 1930 until its closure in 1992. Known for its vast campus and its history of treating thousands of patients, the hospital also developed a reputation for its paranormal activity. However, Unlike the ominous spirits that often haunt such places, the ghost that haunts Metropolitan State Hospital is said to be a guiding force, helping patients find their way to recovery. The spirit in question is believed to be that of a doctor who worked at the hospital in its early years. According to the legend, this doctor was known for his empathetic approach to patient care, often spending extra time with those who were struggling the most. Even after his death, it is said that his spirit lingers, offering a guiding hand to those in need. Witnesses report feeling a sudden, inexplicable sense of clarity and calm when passing through certain areas of the hospital, as if someone is there, silently urging them toward wellness. One former patient, who had struggled with severe depression, recounted an experience in which she felt a presence leading her to a window that overlooked the hospital's tranquil garden. She had been contemplating suicide, but as she stood by the window, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. She described it as if someone had gently taken her hand and showed her a reason to keep going. She later learned about the ghostly doctor and believed he had guided her away from the brink. Similarly, a nurse who worked at Metropolitan State Hospital in its final years reported an encounter where she felt a comforting presence during a particularly stressful night shift. Overwhelmed and on the verge of quitting, she suddenly felt a calming energy in the room. She then heard a soft whisper, though there was no one around. The voice seemed to say, "You are needed here." She took this as a sign to stay, and later found fulfillment in her work. The spirit of the guiding doctor is seen not as a ghost to fear, but as a presence of hope, offering gentle guidance to those who may be lost or struggling. Kuma Cottage, New South Wales, Australia. Kuma Cottage, located in New South Wales, Australia, is not a traditional hospital, but it has a long history of serving as a place of healing. The cottage, once the home of explorer Hamilton Hume, has been repurposed over the years, including stints as a clinic and a convalescent home. It is here that the legend of the Healing Woman began, an apparition who appears in times of dire need, providing comfort and assistance to those who are ill. The Healing Woman is described as an elderly woman, dressed in a simple, long dress from the early 20th century. She is said to appear when someone is gravely ill or injured, offering a serene presence and sometimes even hands-on care. Witnesses who have encountered her often report feeling her hands on their shoulders or head, accompanied by a sense of warmth and tranquility. One story involves a young boy who fell gravely ill while visiting Kuma Cottage with his family. As his fever spiked and panic set in, his parents saw a woman appear by his bedside. She placed her hands on his head and seemed to whisper softly. Within minutes, the boy's fever broke, and he began to recover. Another account comes from a man who had been hiking in the area and sought shelter at Kuma Cottage after sustaining a deep cut to his leg. As he lay there, bleeding and losing hope, he claimed to have seen the Healing Woman appear beside him. She knelt down, placed her hands on his wound, and whispered words he could not understand. Moments later, the bleeding slowed, and he felt a sense of relief wash over him. He believed she had saved his life and returned later to leave flowers in gratitude. The Healing Woman's presence has become a cherished legend in the area, seen as a benevolent spirit who continues to serve as a guardian of health and well-being. Unlike other ghosts that might inspire fear or dread, her appearances are met with gratitude and a sense of divine intervention, reinforcing the idea that not all spirits are bound by torment or unfinished business. Some remain out of love and a desire to help those in need. The stories reveal a different side to the supernatural, a side that is not dark or terrifying, but filled with compassion and care. These benevolent spirits, whether they are the ghost of a dedicated nurse, a guiding doctor, or a healing woman, remind us that the afterlife is not solely the domain of fear. In these haunted places, hope persists amidst the shadows, offering comfort and healing in the most unexpected of ways.